Hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, bringing you another episode in our Take 10 challenge, and this is number 7, all about that fascinating thing called compound interest, which we all hated at high school and thought, where in the dickens are we ever going to use it? Well, we do in retirement, we do while we're saving, we do through all of our lives. Anyway, before we kick off with the information, there's the disclaimer: facts and figures, information only. This is not advice. I think the chart of what's going on here is probably the easiest way to explain compound interest. But of course, if you want to remember back to high school, it literally just means that if we've got $100 and we make 10%, we've got 110. In the following year, if we still make 10%, we're making 10% on the 110. And then we make, and so we've got more. I don't know what that number is, but it'll be bigger. And then, of course, every year we are basically compounding the bigger number. And so instead of this thing just growing by our contribution, it's also growing with these compounding investment returns, and we can basically see over time that our money becomes hyperbolic, meaning that it doesn't just go up in a straight line. It starts off very slowly and then takes off. The older and older we get, the more time that we've had to build this investment. And this is the problem with any investing. It's getting through that initial sort of hurdle where we put money in, we're getting investment returns, but we really just aren't seeing a hell of a lot of growth. Literally, because if we get 10% on $1,000, and we make $100, that's lovely in returns, but really we haven't made huge inroads into it. But when we get 10% on $100,000 and then on $1 million and so forth, then we really start to see this thing take off. But what we've got on this chart here really starts to hit home. We've got these three people. We've got Susan, Bill and Chris. Now, Susan is the middle line there, and but she starts at 25, so she starts on the bottom left-hand corner of the chart with nothing. She puts in $5,000 a year, and she does it from 25 to 35. So that first 10 years of our time frame there, then we've got Susan contributing $5,000 a year for 10 years. So she basically contributes a total of $50,000 by the time she's 35. And then she just stops contributing. She's got other things to be doing, leaves this investment on its own. And then it will continue to grow, even though we don't have any contributions, because of the investment returns. Now, in this particular example, we've got this thing growing away, and I can't read the fine print, I think it was 6%, that effectively this thing is growing and growing and growing. So by the time she gets through to 65 to access this money, it's actually grown to 602,000. So she put in 50, but gets 602. Then we've got Bill. Now, Bill's the bottom line. He doesn't do anything for those first 10 years. He's having too much fun enjoying himself while he's younger, and then decides at 35, perhaps I should do something for my retirement or for the future. He then starts doing exactly the same as what Susan did by doing $5,000 a year. But because he started later, he literally has to do it longer. And so Bill's actually putting in the $5,000 every year, all the way through until he's 65. So he's putting in $150,000 compared to Susan's only 50. But because he started 10 years later, we don't have this greater compounding effect, and so he only ends up with his $540,000 there. So you can really see that he's put in 3 times as much over that period of time to effectively get less money. So you can see that time is the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing in compounding. So the sooner we start, then the better off we're going to be. And of course, the more consistent we can be over our life, because let's have a look at Chris. He was smart in the regard that he started at 25 like Susan. He was happy to put in the same amount of money, but he just kept on doing it. He didn't stop. He basically set himself up with a regular contribution, forgot about it, and this money was just going in, his $100 a week roughly, to effectively keep on building and building and building and compounding. And so by the time he got to 65, yes, he put in 200,000, which is $50,000 more than Bill, but he ends up with 1.142 million, double what Bill's got. So, you know, he's only put in effectively the third of what extra on top of what Bill put in, but doubles the result purely because of the compounding. So, you know, it really does sort of indicate, dare I say, starting earlier, being consistent, and just let time do its thing. Now, of course, depending on the interest rate that we're getting, then effectively, you know, it depends on what we can end up with the end result. I'm going to be talking about the comparisons of different interest rates and the impact on that in a later session. But let's have a look at it from the other direction. Like, if you've got a line in the sand of what you really believe you need in, say, in retirement, how much do you have to put away every month if you wanted to have $1 million, you know, at retirement, at, so let's say age 65? Then what you've got to do there is, again, the younger you are, because you've got time on our side, we can put in a lot less. Now, this chart, it's assuming a 6% return, so you're getting 6% on your money, which may or may not be achievable depending on, you know, where you've got your money. The longer term averages of the conservative and stable options and so forth, it's been sort of that 5 to 6. Balanced accounts over the last 10 years have certainly done on average higher than 6. But anyway, we just picked a number for an example here at 6% return on your money, and you can see there that if you started at 20, aiming to get $1 million by retirement, you only need to put in $361 a month. When I say only, that might be tough for a 20-year-old to find $361 a month, but that's the number. You know, I can't change the numbers. If he gets a higher return, he needs less money, and so it goes on. But of course, not too bad to find 361. Might be a bit tough at 20, but of course later on, finding 361 as your income goes up, you may find that 360 is really quite doable. At 40, if you're now trying to get $1 million, then you've got to start putting in $1,435 a month. You know, so now we're sort of talking per week what you needed to do per month 20 years earlier. But there, $1,435 per month at 40 would get you there. And if you're starting at 60, you know, yep, we haven't got much time on our side. So indeed, to get your $1 million, you'd be needing to be putting in $14,261 a month. Now, as I say, if I've got some older people listening and you've missed the boat, I'm not here to scare you or give you a heart attack, but it is a bit of reality that we've then got to think of what are we doing and what can we do to help this. So generally speaking, what we do is we start looking for tax deductions while we're still working. We look for, you know, better rates of return perhaps. Then we've got to worry about risk. So it's a complicated situation. The older we certainly get, and that's where, you know, coming along, perhaps having a chat about what are your other options. We'll be covering other options, obviously, in future sessions. But if you're ready to kickstart this thing now, you really need to start thinking what you're going to do if you're older and and the boat's starting to sail away without you. Okay, now on that cheery note, we'll see you again on another session.